The purpose of this video is to highlight some of the old school sort of like British documents that had an influence on sort of the development of the American system of government. And it's important to realize that we often like to think that a lot of the things in our government are uniquely American, but the truth and reality is that many of these concepts had existed long before the United States was ever founded as a separate country. So these are just a couple of the old school British documents, like for example, the Magna Carta, which was issued back in 1215, which is like 500 years prior to like the American Revolution. Stressed things like limited government, that government wasn't absolute, it couldn't do whatever it wanted to do, it had to play by certain rules, that the citizens should have things like trial by jury, they should be provided with due process, like everybody should be treated equally under the law. These are ideas that will eventually show up in the American documents, but like they were concepts that had existed long before. Or like the Petition of Right, which was a British document from the early 1600s. We're getting a little bit closer to the American Revolution now, but we're still over 100 years away. The idea of like no taxation without consent. Like the founding fathers, our founding fathers, didn't come up with the idea of like no taxation without representation. That had existed long before. Right? Again, like punishment by your peers, like more trial rights. So again, these are things that show up like in our documents, but they had existed in previous documents before. And like the English Bill of Rights in 1869 talked about the idea of like free elections, not having like government sort of like meddle in elections or interfere with them. The idea of no cruel and unusual punishment, which again shows up in our Bill of Rights. Again, third sort of one that deals with like fair trials. So again, all of these things had existed previously to America developing as a country. It also explains, since these were commonly held rights, why the colonists got so frustrated when the British government denied many of these rights to them. It sort of explains like how revolution came to be, but then it also explains how some of these ideas end up in what will be like eventually the Bill of Rights and our Constitution.